and we can admit everybody. And you can disable the waiting room if you want, because I think at this point all the AI bots have already tried to enter. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday. Can you all hear me okay? We are listening to Poe and the Forefathers. Color of the Aina. Hi, Rufino.
Aloha.
Hi, Anna.
Hey, Anna.
Hello, everybody.
Aloha.
We still have a few people probably coming on. We expect around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A couple more people. Hi, Shannon. Happy Aloha Friday. Poe and the Forefathers are, I think, a six-piece group. My friend plays this lap steel, and they just had a gig last night, and I think they're great. Check them out. If you haven't already, you can change your Zoom name to your name. And since we have a smaller group today, we will go around and share. We can do quick introductions with everybody. And then after that, we'll have a presentation from Aaron with the Oahu Invasive Species Council. Welcome, Aaron. All right. Maybe one more minute. So warm is the feeling of Ohana, and precious the keiki o Hawaii, but still hard is the hana. All right. So everybody knows me, pretty sure, but I will introduce myself real quickly. My name is Anna Mines. I'm the Community Garden Project Manager with the City and County of Honolulu and one of the co-facilitators of Hui Māla. I guess it's just Aaron who I haven't met face to face yet, so nice to meet you. And then I guess we can just pass it on to somebody else. So I'll pass it over to Alice.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Anna, for facilitating this again. Really look forward to the speakers this morning. Alice Liu, Hawaii Public Health Institute, Food System Program Manager. And I'll kick it to Alex.
Good morning. My name is Alex Nahos Corby. I'm the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Program Manager for the Office of Economic Revitalization. And I'll pass it to Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate Eichstead, and I am with the City and County Department of Parks and Recreation, and I work as the coordinator of the Community Gardens Program. And we have been doing a lot with the Little Red Fire ants because we share, as community gardeners, we share a lot of plants. So we are really trying to get this information out to our gardeners. So I will pass it to the other Anna.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Ezzi. I'm with the County of Hawaii. I'm an agriculture research and policy specialist in the Department of Research and Development. I'm based over in Hilo on the Big Island. I'll pass it to Shannon.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Tanaka. I'm from Department of Health. I'm the early childhood educator program specialist. Is there a question?
Oh,
Okay.
just
quick
Um,
introduction.
okay, I'll pass it to Alice.
I'll pass it to Rufino.
Aloha, Rufino with the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Community Relations, and uplifting Indigenous traditional ecological knowledge through food systems. So, mahalo for all you guys do to uplift food systems and gardens and food in gardens. I don't know who else is next. Aaron? Aaron Bishop.
Good morning. I'm Erin Bishop. I'm the outreach coordinator with the Oahu Invasive Species Committee, and I'm here to do the presentation for LFA. So I think Dane still hasn't gone yet, so I'll pass it to Dane.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Good morning, everybody. Dane Sherblum with HHF Planners, a private local planning firm. Just interested in keeping up with all the great work that you guys are doing and seeing where we can jump in to help things along.
Great. Thanks, Dane. Thanks, everybody. The agenda for today, pretty simple. Well, first of all, a lot of us have heard, I think, this Olelo Noe out before, He ali'i ka aina, he kalva ke kanaka. And it is translated as the land is chief, the people are its servants. And this was actually, I think, shared at our very first in-person convening when we were at CNHA's garden. Um, and I think it's relevant generally to the work that we do, right? I like to share an Olelo Noe out at the top of each convening for myself even, to learn lessons from these, these Olelo Noe Ao, and also to see how it relates to the work that we do. And in, I think this particular case with today's topic around invasive species and LFA, as we'll learn, we really need to do the work as, our species needs to do the work to make sure that Oahu and all the islands for that matter, right? But Oahu still has a chance at eradication. So the awareness and ability to recognize and to know how to then treat all of the LFA is going to be so important. And then and I know you'll talk about this, Aaron, but I think it's also especially important because a lot of the work that people do, that we have farmers, we have people who do Malama Aina work, people who are, out in the the mountains building fences against invasive species, people who are just, in the land. And if LFA is present, it makes it harder to do that work. And so that has all these other spiraling repercussions. So to be a servant to the land as chief would also mean to make that a functional and like a welcoming space to be in, which is harder to do when you're being bitten. So I wanted to share that today. Any other reflections on that before I move on? Yeah. And then the presentation will be about 30 to 45 minutes or even longer, depending on if we have questions and want to, talk more about the subject. And then we do have time at the end for member updates. And then we can do a couple announcements. So if you have any in your work related to any updates or announcements that you'd like to share, keep thinking on that so that you're ready by the time we get to that point in the call. And Alex, since you're hosting the Zoom, is it possible to stay on after for any spontaneous conversation? She may have had to step away. Well, I think this will be plenty of time.
Sorry, what did you say, Anna?
Is there another Zoom at?
No. We're good for the whole day if we want.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be excessive, but good to know. All right. And then we already did that. So yes, I will hand it over to Aaron. Aaron, would you like to share screen?
I'm so
Sure.
sorry, Anna, would this be recorded?
It is,
Oh, you're already
it is
recording.
recording.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I think I can make you co-host. Oh, I can't. Alex, can
Yeah,
you make Aaron
we can do it.
co-host? Okay.
Okay, should be good now.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay?
It's not sharing for me. Hold on. Do
I can see.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, because I didn't stop sharing. That's why. There, that's great. Can you see that now, Kate? Okay, cool.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you all stopping by and listening to this. This is a presentation. I've tried to tailor it a little bit more to community gardens to give you guys the most relevant information. Um, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the issue, but the way I would like to talk to you folks about it is in a way where you can share with your community gardens and your members and anyone else who does this sort of work. So it'll start out a little basic, but I really want to give you guys some nuanced information that makes it a little bit more interesting. They are ants, they do sting, they have repercussions that are far reaching. But little interesting tidbits about the ant, we have been finding really get people involved and interested in the subject. Ants generally aren't really interesting when it comes to invasive species, but once this ant does invade an area, it's all anybody can talk about. There are a lot of organizations that do this work in Hawaii. The Hawaii Ant Lab was the lead for developing the treatment methods. They did a lot of research about it. OISC is stepping in. We got some funding to work in the Windward Ko'olapoko area. And then Department of Agriculture has launched a new program to help out 585 residents on Oahu. So there's a lot of work being done on this, and we're really just trying to tackle this and not end up having widespread impacts like Big Island does. So for the folks that live in Hilo, you're really familiar with this issue. Okay, so I like to start this out. This is just a really nice way for you folks to talk to the general public about what invasive species mean in Hawaii. And it's important to understand what a native species is. Especially on Oahu, it's not something that we generally come in contact with. We have a lot of invasive species at our lower elevations. But an easy way to explain these terms is just native species are any plants and animals that arrived to Hawaii before humans. So they got here on their own volition by the wind, waves, or wings of birds. And because they were isolated for so long, many of these species that arrived on their own have evolved into species that are only found here in Hawaii. That in turn also makes them very vulnerable because a lot of them lost a lot of the defenses that their ancestors had. Non-native species are not necessarily bad. It's just any plant or animal that arrived with the help of humans, whether that was accidentally or on purpose. So when we think of things like coconut and kalo, pineapple, plumeria, a lot of the things associated with Hawaii are not actually native species, but they are economically and culturally important species. And then you have invasive species. These are any non-native species that cause harm to the environment, economy, our health, and here in Hawaii, the quality of life is added to that definition. The worst invasive species harm all four of those, and LFA is absolutely one of them. When we talk about invasive species, it's the invasive species curve. So basically you want to stop them from entering into the state. That's the prevention that's down here in the lower left-hand corner. As the species starts to spread, you do get a small space in the beginning where you can eradicate it. So it has gotten to the island. It is starting to establish and reproduce. At that point, if you catch it early, you can eradicate it. Then you get into this area of containment. That could be just containing it locally within a place on the island, or it could mean that you're trying to contain it to the island itself. And containment is actually where we are with CRB statewide, but CRB on Oahu has moved over into this big red block. So that means that it's widespread. The cost to manage it is extremely high, and then the impacts start to increase as the species starts to reproduce, the densities get more, and it spreads. With Little Fire Ant, we want to be working in this area right here. On Oahu, we're still there, but we are fast approaching that red block towards the right. Invasive species get a lot of news press, but it's usually the big ones: skunks, Brazilian wandering spiders, snakes, coconut crabs. This was back in 2014. If you happen to miss this guy, you can go to the zoo and see him. He's there in a cage. This caiman was found in the Nu'uanu Reservoir. This was back in the 90s. And then back in the 80s, they had red-bellied piranhas up in Lake Wilson. These are all pretty large animals and very easy to identify. It's a lot different when you talk about insects, plants, fungus, and other pathogens. I do work for the Oahu Invasive Species, and every county has their own invasive species committee. The reason each county has their own is because we work in those early areas of the invasion curve. We're really trying to eradicate species when they show up. Locally, we have different invasive species on different islands. So that's why we've got a bisque, a misque, a momisque for Molokai, owisk, and a kisk. And that is because if you were in Hilo and you heard a coqui frog, you could call bisque and they would say, sorry, that's loud, it's everywhere. We don't have the resources to actually manage it. So they're not going to do anything about it. But on Oahu, if you were to call me and say, Erin, I hear a coqui frog, I'll say, oh my God, where is it? Let me get Department of Ag. They will get people out there to catch it. We don't have widespread populations of coqui frogs. And we want to keep it that way. Different invasive species for different islands. If you called me and said, oh, I hear or I see a mongoose, I would say, oh, sorry, they're everywhere. Not much we can do about it. But if you were on Kauai and saw a mongoose and called kisk, they would respond immediately with setting out traps, trying to catch it because they don't have widespread populations and they want to keep it that way. You don't have to know what species is on what island, all right? They have this great website, 643pest.org. You can just put it on your phone, take a picture, take a recording, go to this website, upload it, and you're done. It is up to the people receiving the reports to filter them out then to the appropriate responding agencies. So anything that's weird that catches your eye, a plant, a bug, an insect, a slug, whatever it might be, take a picture and report it. That's what this is for. There's also a phone number. I don't know many people that use the phone number that much anymore. With the website, you can get follow-ups and follow up on your report. The website, it's kind of banker's hours, so you might have to leave a message and then it's difficult to follow up. Another thing is 643-PEST. I think we're all old enough to figure out how to dial PEST on a phone, but it's something that I do have to explain to younger people how to use letters to dial numbers. So the website tends to be the best way to go. So with invasive species and ants, we have no native ants in here in Hawaii. No ant could have survived the journey across 2,000 miles of open ocean. Ants came with people. We now have over 65 introduced species. That said, there's over 10,000 species of ants, known ants in the world. So we're constantly at risk to get a new type of ant. Some are worse than others. This ant here on the left side of the screen is the Glaber ant. That's the black ant that you find in your citrus trees and on your hibiscus and in your kitchen and in your car and in your bathroom. They're not incredibly invasive. And I say that because they're not going to sting you. They don't bite you. They're more of a nuisance. But then as you move across these pictures, the crazy ant and the big-headed ant, those are ants that will also have environmental impacts. They will swarm baby birds in the nest. They eat insects. So different ants have different impacts. None are native. They're all somewhat of a nuisance, but some are worse than others. And little fire ant is actually one of the worst in the world. We have fire ants here already in Hawaii. So if you've lived here for more than, I would say, 6 months and you've been to a beach, you've probably been stung on your feet or your ankles by the guy on the left here. So that is the tropical fire ant. It's about 1/4 of an inch long. They're pretty big. They like hot, dry, sunny, open areas. Their nests are very hard or easy to see. You'll see them in the cracks of sidewalk. It looks like a pile of sand. The little fire ant on the right is about 1/3 of the size. They're only as long as a penny is thick. They're extremely tiny, and they're the color of a penny. They're that rust color, so they're really hard to see. Their habitats are a little bit different. They like anywhere where they can find shade and moisture. So don't be fooled that if you live out in Waianae, you're not going to get LFA. If you've got plants around your house, you can have LFA. They're going to be hiding in the leaf litter. They also nest up in the trees, which is different than the tropical fire ant. So on a breezy day, if you're in an area with LFA, they will blow out of the trees and get caught in your hair and in your clothes, and you'll get stung. You can't really find their nests. They don't have any obvious nest or nest openings. And that's important to why and how we do the treatment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. When I say this is one of the worst species in the world, that's because they harm all four of those federal and state definitions of what it means to be an invasive species. So they do harm our health. While they're not a very aggressive ant, you can have 100 of them crawling on your hands and they won't sting you. But as soon as you start to move or make a fist, when they get pinched in between your skin or against your clothes, they aggressively sting as a defense mechanism. Because their colonies are really dense, you're not going to get stung by one or two. It'll be 20 or 30 ants at one time. And then what ends up happening is you end up with these welts. They tend to fall off, so you kind of don't know what stings you. And this is important for your gardeners if they are out working in their garden and they are talking about something stinging me. I don't know what it is. They generally say biting, something's biting me and leaving itchy welts. This is definitely a cue for you guys to say, have you tested for little fire ant? Some people are really susceptible and sensitive to the stings. So if you're the type of person who gets really bad mosquito bites, you get the welts that last for a long time, you're going to have a much worse reaction. I have gotten myself stung on purpose. I put them on the inside of my elbow and close my elbow and open it back up again. It lasts for about an hour. And it kind of feels, if you've ever worked with fiberglass installation, it feels like that is in your skin. So it burns and it itches. The other thing that they do is they are attracted to pet food. It's got a lot of meats and protein in it. And then when the animals go to eat that food, the ants will get on them and then they are attracted to soft, moist body parts. So they tend to go for the eyes. The ants will sting animals in their eyes, and those repeated stings cause damage to the cornea of the animals. And so it looks like they have cataracts. You start to see these white spots all over their eyes, and it causes a permanent blindness. And it's also very painful. You will see this with dogs and cats that spend a lot of time outside, but it can also happen to chickens, goats, pigs, and horses. So this is also another thing. A lot of these community gardens, unfortunately, you tend to have feral cat colonies around them. So if any of your people are noticing the cats, wow, the cats have some issue with their eyes, you want to test. Okay, that's a symptom of LFA infestations. The other thing they do is that they will farm crop pests like aphids and mealybugs and scale insects. And that's
Erin?
because, yes.
I'm sorry. Is it okay if we interrupt with some questions?
Oh, sure, of course.
Just because on the topic of cat colonies and community gardens, there's a lot of people who come and feed the cats, and usually it's dry food, it's not wet food, but would that attract too? Would that create more environment for ants? Is that something we would want to like let them know, like don't, that's another reason why not to feed cat colonies or
It wouldn't bring ants in, and the ants tend to only forage about 30 feet from a nest. So it wouldn't necessarily be something that would attract outside ant colonies to move into an area from long distances. But it definitely, even the dry food is an attractant for the ants.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So these crop pests, they will produce that sugary substance because they're a sucking insect, and the sugary substance that they excrete is something that the ants will use for a quick alternative food source. And so what'll happen is they allow these crop pests populations to bloom, and then you start to see issues. If you see this with other ants too, like citrus trees, you generally start to get a lot of black ants, then you'll get more scale and mealybugs and whiteflies, and then you get the mold. So when you start to see these like weird unexplained blossomings of these crop pests, that's also another indicator you probably want to test. This will harm the economy. Of course, it reduces the amount of produce that the plants produce. And then here in this picture on the left, you see these people picking lychee. I especially would like to point out the girl with the pink shorts and the white t-shirt. If these trees had LFA, she wouldn't even be there. She would be lit up from her arms to her legs. Nobody's going to want to pick those crops. So it means that farmers are going to have to control this pest, and that's a cost. The other thing is on the right-hand side, you can see a nice tour operator going out into the forest. Forests that have LFA are not going to be welcoming to visitors, and tourism is our biggest driver for our economy. And then our environment. So the picture on the left, my left, I think you guys can see it. My left is a native bird, a ground nesting shorebird. This is actually being attacked by big-headed ants. So as birds are incubating their eggs and as baby eggs hatch, those hatchlings are extremely susceptible. Little fire ants are going to do this exact same thing, not only to birds that nest on the ground, but our native forest birds that nest in the trees, because these colonies, this is an arboreal ant, it will nest in the trees. And then also they will feed on native insects. So insect larvae, the caterpillars for our Kamehameha butterfly and the koa butterfly are extremely susceptible. So you see plummeting drops in insect populations in areas that are heavy with little fire ants. Anecdotally, I've heard from Big Island that areas that are heavily infested with little fire ants have a drastically reduced amount of coqui frogs as well. I'm not advocating that one is better than the other. We should never do that. But it just shows the impacts that they can have to their environment. And then here in Hawaii, we also consider quality of life. So the wonderful thing is that we've got seasonality that's conducive to outdoor activities all year long. So culturally, lo'i are heavily impacted. This ant, remember, likes those moist, damp, shady areas. Camping, hiking, picnicking, all these outdoor activities are going to be significantly impacted, if not eliminated, because people are not going to want to bring their kids to a park and have them get stung. To talk about the biology of the ants is very important because this does also go back to why they're so successful and how we do the treatments. So ants are a social insect. They are ruled by a queen. She is the only one that can start and maintain a nest. If you move worker ants around, they will live for a couple of weeks and then they die. They don't reproduce. It's just the queen. Moving queen ants from place to place is how colonies get introduced. All of the workers that you see foraging of LFA out and about, they're old and there's very few of them. So it's kind of like an iceberg, you know, with an ant colony. Most of the ants are actually in the nest tending to the queen and tending to the larva. They send those older workers out to do the dangerous work of finding food and bringing it back. Once an ant colony gets pretty dense, the queen will lay another queen egg and she will hatch, and she literally picks up some worker ants and walks a few feet away and starts her own new colony. Now, in their invaded range, little fire ants are actually clonal. But in their native range, they reproduce sexually. So in their native range, each one of those colonies are territorial and they fight for resources. But in their invaded range, they will actually share workers and share resources because they recognize each other as family. This is what makes them so successful in their invaded ranges to take over and completely dominate an area. This activity of laying a queen and her walking a few feet away to start a new colony, this is called budding, and it's three-dimensional with little fire ants. They can go up in a tree, in a shrub, on the ground, in your car, in your sofa. This can happen anywhere. Because those colonies get very dense and they can also share queens, it's not just one queen per colony, they can have several within their own little nest. A 5,000 square foot lot on Oahu, which is about average size, can have over 9 million ants and 10,000 egg-laying queens. So while they don't spread very quickly geographically, their populations can get pretty dense pretty quickly. So when we tackle infestations, so we're looking at a neighborhood, this person sends their ants to me. I say, oh, it's little fire ants. We can't just go treat this one house. What we have to do is survey all of the houses around it to find out who else has ants. Because all of these 8 houses, if they have ants, we consider this to be one infestation because there are so many queens. We can't just treat 1 or 2 of these 8 houses and get rid of them. We have to treat the entire thing and treat it as a localized eradication. And that's what we're trying to do on Oahu right now. Find all of these populations, eradicate them as soon as they come up, because once it gets in throughout an entire neighborhood, when we're talking about several square blocks, that's when it becomes very difficult to actually get rid of the ants. The statewide situation is that LFA are widely established on Big Island. They were detected in 1999, and when they identified the ant, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about little fire ants. They're native to South America. They're also present in Florida and in Texas. But in Florida and Texas, they have another invasive ant called red imported fire ant, which we don't have here. Florida and Texas also has seasonal changes. So they've got cold weather snaps, they've got droughts. All of these things help keep those populations in check. So little fire ant situation, while it is invasive in Florida and in Texas, it's nowhere near the impact that it would have and does have here in Hawaii. Once they figured out what it was, the Hawaii Ant Lab got some funding and was born out of Department of Agriculture. They said, we need some resources. We don't have the time. Give them some money. And they were able to do research about this ant and come up with a treatment plan. By that time, it was too far widespread on Big Island for them to have the resources to do an eradication. So nowadays, every single district on Big Island has little fire ants. And when I say every district, I mean every single district. I've heard stories about in Kona, when you go out onto the lava flows, you can actually find little fire ants underneath the surface of those dried lava flows because there are so many tunnels and water and there's resources. So don't let dry areas fool you into them not having little fire. They can be anywhere where they can get their resources that they need. Oahu has the next most. We have 66 active sites as of March, and I will tell you we've had 4 more since then. But we've already started working on this. We've got 6 sites already eradicated and 14 that have been treated, and now we're just monitoring to make sure no queens persisted and that the sites aren't coming back. Maui and Kauai have had just a few, and what they're really concerned with is if Oahu ends up like Big Island, guaranteed they're going to be next. So the more ants you have in one area, all of the produce, all of the materials that are leaving Big Island are risked to bring little fire ants. If Oahu also has it, that's doubling the amount of things that can come into the other islands. So they're really rooting for us. So right now, we've had the prevention. It was first detected here in 2014. It was just 3 sites. Those were treated. Those are eradicated. As time goes on and as people know more about this, people are starting to look and check, and now we're finding more and more. So we're fast approaching this portion in the curve where we really have to take some action, and that's what we're doing. And that's why this type of outreach is very important, so that we have everyone looking for them, reporting them, so that we can go eradicate those populations as soon as they come up. So on Oahu, this map shows where generally these sites are. Each one of these dots doesn't necessarily represent the size of an infestation. There's a couple of sites in Kailua that are only 2 houses. They caught it early. We were able to go out there. It's only 2 yards. Some are larger than others. Lanikai, for instance, had like 86 properties, which we had to go in and treat. So this just shows that a lot of these sites are on windward side. Windward tends to have bigger yards, people more involved in their gardens, a lot of gardeners. It's not as urbanized as town side. And this is why you're starting to see more and more ants pop up here. It's not that they're spreading across windward side, it's just that people are moving them and they're finding them. The way they move, the highest risk is plants. Okay. Several of the sites I've been to, for instance, one of them, the guy said, oh, I had my yard landscaped last April. They put in a nice putting green, they put in some gravel and some plants, and his entire yard is loaded. That's because the plants that they moved in were infested with LFA. They're very small, very hard to see. That's why testing is so important before you install any plants and even materials in your yard. They can move in gravel, mulch, compost, fresh fruits, especially like roadside stands, and people are just picking them straight out of the trees and the shrubs and bringing them. You could have a queen in there. Generally, you're going to have workers, but you could have queens. And then also on equipment, if equipment stays in an area that's infested with LFA for 24 hours or more, the chances of queens moving in there and trying to find a new nest is pretty high. This is, oh, sorry, I don't know why I have that in there twice. But if you would like to have a little bit of a better idea, we do have some regional maps up on our website, oahuis.org. There is an LFA community actions page, and I update this quarterly. We can't get really specific because most of these, I'd say 98% of them are private properties. So we don't want to say old so-and-so at 45 dash whatever on Olamano Street has them. All right. We do have to protect privacy. Nobody does this on purpose. All right. But these things are moving. Also, please don't let this give you some sort of sense of security. If you don't see a dot where you live, that doesn't mean they're not there. Unless we are testing every single yard, every single year, you never really know where they are. So that's the importance of testing and just being aware of the situation because they could show up anywhere. Does anybody have any questions? Sorry, I should pause. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. This graph shows the infestations or detections over a period of time. It was December 2013 when the first detection happened. So you can see it sort of stabilized. The interesting thing, and I'm sure those of you that work in outreach, you kind of know that it takes 10 years for a message to start to really get out there and get some traction. So 10 years later, here we are. People are starting to get stung. Now people are involved. People are hearing about it. There were a couple of news stories. They were found at some nurseries. So we're starting to get these spikes. All right. So we're getting more and more detections each and every year. There are several organizations that are working to get through these detections. So don't worry too much about the circles. I have these up here. They are also on the website. This top shows you how many active sites of the 66 or of the total detections are active. That means that they've been detected. They're either in treatment or waiting to get in treatment. This bottom left circle shows you all of the agencies and how many of the sites we're all working on. So HAL is Hawaii Ant Lab, HDOA is Department of Agriculture, HOK is a nonprofit, and Windward Ko'olau, it's the Huio Ko'olau Poko group, and then Division of Forestry and Wildlife. All of us are working on some of these sites. And then this bottom circle on the right-hand side shows you of the sites, how many are not started yet. And that's because we don't have the resources and enough people to get out there and get them surveyed to figure out how big these sites are. So we have 29 sites that we've got a positive detection. We're just waiting to be able to find the time and the people to go out there and get them. So what can you do? The biggest thing everybody can do is test your yard once a year. For community gardens, I would say ideally it's quarterly. All right, so if you can test it quarterly, that's wonderful. Twice a year, good. Once a year, minimum. But if you can do a testing of your community garden at least once a year, that's very important. That means that you're going to catch these infestations early, right? They don't spread very far, very quickly on their own. So that means that if we find them early, they're much easier to get rid of. This QR code is from stoptheant.org. You can go on there and order a free test kit. We put it in the mail. We do weekly mailers. And in that kit is chopsticks. They're actually coffee stirrers, a Ziploc bag, and a self-addressed stamped envelope. We do not provide peanut butter, but that's the only other thing you need. Just some cheap peanut butter, no Whole Foods, no organic, Skippy, Peter Pan, Jif. That's what the ants prefer. If anybody in your community gardens is allergic to peanut butter, or if you're going to try and have kids, I know there was somebody with an education background. If you want to do something with kids and have them do this, you can use mayonnaise, regular mayonnaise. Lunch meat also works. The easiest thing to do is just bait your sticks. Don't put a big glob of peanut butter, very thin smear. If you put a big glob of peanut butter, the ants will get stuck in the peanut butter and we can't identify them. A very thin smear, just scrape peanut butter off the stick after you put it in the peanut butter. Then you put it out for an hour. You're going to lay them at the base of potted plants or around borders, at the bottom of trees, around shrubs. Be sure that you are not putting it in direct sunlight. Ants don't really, these ants like shade and damp and moisture, and that's what they're going to be drawn to. And then you leave those sticks out for 1 hour. If you leave them out for more than an hour, the ants will eat all the peanut butter and go away, and you won't know what you got. All right. Then you're going to put them back in that Ziploc bag and freeze them overnight. That will kill the ants. If you can't mail them out the next day, that's fine. Just keep them in the freezer until you're ready to mail them in to us. And then you just simply put them in an envelope and put your contact information and where you surveyed and with the ants. This is going to give you an idea. So community gardens, many of them have this set up. You've got the boxes. They're all a certain amount of distance away from each other. If I were going to survey this community garden, I would want to lay sticks every 10 steps. So it might look something like this, a stick where all the red dots are. And as you go through this community garden, you're laying your sticks out, you wait 1 hour, go pick them back up. Please remember to not forget about the areas in the back, the edges of your community garden property. So if you have any large shade trees around the area, parking lots, especially anywhere where people are bringing and dropping off materials, anywhere there's a lot of human activity where things are being brought in, that's really where you want to focus your efforts. Every 10 steps works out to be every 30 feet. Remember I said ants forage for about 30 feet from the nest. If you do it every 10 steps, that's a really good transect line. Quarterly is ideal, minimum once a year. October in Hawaii is Stop the Ant Month, so that's a really good time. You can mark your calendars if you want to go to your community garden and do a garden-wide test every October. That's wonderful. And then letting your community gardeners know that they should be testing plants before they bring them into the garden. Ideally, you would test it before you ever gave a plant away or purchased a plant, but you guys have new stuff coming in all the time. You want to make sure that people are putting a peanut butter stick in there and just seeing what comes out. We do have some look-alike ants in Hawaii. The reason you have to mail your ants into us is because there's other small rust-colored ants that are already here. So to the naked eye, remember they're only as long as a penny is thick. They're so tiny. We have to look at them under a microscope and look at very specific anatomical features to be able to identify little fire ant as opposed to a few of these others. If you end up having little fire ant at your garden, don't panic. It's treatable. The tools are there. We know how to get rid of them. There are products that you can use for edible plants. The treatments don't have to actually be in the garden bed. You can treat around the garden beds, and the ants will forage and get those treatments. The treatment will be led by OISC or our partners in the efforts to do this. It's a very specific treatment. So what we'll do is we have to come out and survey the entire area until we find no more little fire ants. Because they do that budding effect, think of it as a blob that grows. And once we get to the edge of the blob, we know where the treatment is. The treatment is every 6 weeks, and there's 8 treatments. So it works out to be a year. We'll survey twice during the treatment. So between treatment 4 and 5, which is about 6 month mark, we survey to see how the treatment's going, make sure we're not missing anything. And then at the end of the treatment cycle, we survey again. If there are no ants found at the end of the treatment cycle, we will monitor once a year for 3 years. So every 6 months, we're going to be coming out and surveying that area with baited vials with peanut butter. The reason we do this is queens will live for 2 years. So if we can monitor it and see no more ants for 3 years, we can feel confident that no queens persisted and that the site is clean and it's eradicated. The baits that we use are two of them. So the first one is a toxicant bait. What we usually use is probate. This is a very small amount of toxicant in the bait. We want the ants to live for anywhere from 48 to 72 hours after they eat this bait. The reason being they will take the bait back to the nest and then it has to go through all of these layers. So number one, the ant eats the bait. They leave pheromone trails so other ants will come to the bait. Then they go back to the nest. They feed the other ants in the bait, the ants the bait, and then those ants will feed it to the larva, and then eventually it will get to the queen. So it has to go through all these layers before it ever gets to the queen, and that's who we need to get. So coming in and nuking a place with pesticides isn't going to do anything. It get rid of a lot of workers, but it will not kill the queen. The good thing about this is that it makes it very safe. It's low toxicant, it's non-restricted pesticides. Anybody can go order this from City Mill. You can buy it at Home Depot. You can get off Amazon. This bait is a dry bait, looks like sand. But remember, ants live up in the trees too. So there's also insect growth regulators. This is not toxic. We mix it up into a gel bait that's the consistency of pancake batter. We put some peanut butter in there, and then we squirt it into the trees. And what happens is the ants will feed it, similar to the toxicant bait. It goes through all those levels, eventually making it to the queen. When she eats it, it disrupts her reproductive cycles. And so either her eggs won't hatch, and she will then also start to reduce the amount of eggs she lays. So these two in combination have been very effective. Like I said, it takes 8 treatments because we put a little bit out at a time. The other reason for that is ants are smart. They've been around for millennia. If something's making their nest sick, they won't eat it. So it's called bait shyness. So we always follow the label. We never go over the the recommended amounts per acre, especially because we don't want the ants to get the bait shyness. There's a plethora of products that work for this. So with your community gardens, you have a lot of edible plants. This one in the middle, Antix, and Advian also have very specific labels. So you can actually apply those to things like banana. But with the community garden, because everything is so organized, you have little areas, little small areas. You can apply it outside of the area of the actual food crops. And the ants, even if they're in the food crops, they go out and forage so they can bring it back. So it's absolutely safe for people, pets. You can use it in and around food crops. The only thing that we've ever run into is chickens. It won't hurt a chicken, but when you're applying that granular bait to the ground and a chicken sees it, it goes and it eats it. And then the ants don't get it because the chickens have eaten it. So what we're trying to do right now is push back this curve. And because we have a million sets of eyes, we have so many people on Oahu, we really feel confident. We've got buy-in from the public. People are interested. They don't want this ant here. So we can start to push back that curve. And we do this by having people test regularly, test every new plant that you get or receive or purchase. If you're getting stung, test. And then if anybody works in an organization where you would like to learn more and be more proactive and do testing and learn how to do treatments, we have mini trainings that will go into how to identify ants as well. And so you can email us and we can get that scheduled for you. The more people we can have a pool of labor. So if you have ants at your garden and you're trained, we can call on you and come out with you the first couple of times, and then you can go ahead and do the treatment yourself. There's only a handful of people that are trying to treat all of these sites. So the more people we have that know how to do this and do it properly, the better off we're going to be. And we can really get that curve pushed back to a point where we don't have to live with this for the rest of our lives. These are the contact information. So I'm the outreach coordinator. We also have a community liaison, Robbie Snyder. They are out actually in the field doing ant treatments today. But Robbie is very good at working with the communities and very knowledgeable about treatments. And then, like I said, our community partners, this is very much an effort that's being chipped in with from a lot of different organizations. And I think that is it. So I will stop sharing and I'm very happy to answer any questions that I can.
I have a question about the coqui frogs in Waimanalo. I think we heard, I don't know if we just call the pest, what is it called?
The 643 pest?
Yeah, 643
Yeah.
pest. Okay.
Yep, you can call that. You can contact us too. There is a breeding population. There's two of them on Oahu right now. There's one in the back of Waimanalo, kind of by the head wall. And then also in Pololo Valley, in the very back of Pololo Valley, there's a breeding population. They are being addressed right now. So the Waimanalo population, Department of Agriculture is the lead for koki, all things koki frog on Oahu, but Department of Land and Natural Resources and OISC are also helping with that for both the locations. With koki frogs, when they hatch, they're fully formed frogs. They're not tadpoles. So they pop up anywhere. They'll pop up in a Home Depot garden center. They pop up in someone's yard. So anytime you hear one on Oahu, you can do the 643 pest, or you have my information too. We share it directly with Department of Agriculture.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Then another one, I do want to reach out to you to have this training. This is so so informative. Thank you so much. Our team touches housing, tourism, food systems. So we definitely want to have our people working on that, our directors, hear this and hopefully can become partners in this work. Yeah, I'll email you, but mahalo for this.
Of course. And for your group specifically, especially people that are doing restoration and low E work, you have a lot of movement of materials, and there is one site on Oahu that is a low E restoration site, and they have it. So anybody who does INA work, please share this with them and have them come to those trainings.
Yeah.
Happy to share this. The people that are actually working the lands are like frontline reporters. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Very familiar with the bite of the little pirates. They also know how to like crawl into your sensitive crevices and then they bite. They're evil. But I was just wondering if you could share. I know like there was some like movement at the ledge this session with there was like a big biosecurity bill kind of like renaming the department. Just wondering like if you could kind of give like a summary of how that could affect like your efforts against LFA or other invasives.
Sure.
Or any other bills too.
Yeah, so last year they had like sort of an omnibus bill. It was a big biosecurity bill. It was initially $20 million, but got reduced at the governor's desk to 10. $1.5 million of that was specific for little fire ants, and this was specific for Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture has, I believe it's 1.1 or $1.2 million contract with a pest control operator. I believe it's Terminex, and they will treat 580 properties on Oahu, some on Kauai and some on Big Island. What they are trying to do right now with that is provide the labor to address all of these infestations and get them treated. The bill that was submitted this session, was to move what is the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, the HISC, and the HISC is made up of managers from 6 departments: Department of Health, UH, Business and Economic Development, DLNR, Department of Ag, and a 6th one. I can't remember. But it's this collaborative committee or council, and it's from all these departments that have worked with invasive species. Department of Health's worried about rats and mosquitoes and vice versa. There's a lot of impacts from invasive species. The movement, they wanted to consolidate it and move it into Department of Agriculture and create a biosecurity department. This was slightly controversial. It was actually really controversial within the invasive species sort of world, because Department of Agriculture's mandate is very specific to agricultural pests. So the fear was that a lot was going to be lost for things that impact culture and environment, and they were not going to be prioritized. So for instance, OISC works on an invasive plant called Myconia that has really significant impacts to our watersheds and water functions. Department of Agriculture is not worried about Myconia. So that did pass. It was, they took it out when it did crossover, but the, who was it? I think it was the budget committee put it back in. And I believe if it does pass, the year I saw was 2030 was when that change was supposed to happen. There's a lot of things, maybe they're going to design it in a way where it will still mirror what's been going on at the HISC, which also mirrors sort of how New Zealand does their biosecurity. They have a lot of different departments that are part of their biosecurity teams. And so, yeah, I guess we'll wait and see how it goes. As far
Thank you.
as funding, so there has been some state funding that all went to Department of Agriculture, and they did it with the Terminix contract. OISC has some funding we have federal funding that was safe from all of the cuts that had happened because it had already been released. It's through the REPI fund, which is the Resilience and Environmental, oh, I forget now, but it's a Department of Defense program, and it is tied to the Marine Corps base. So that's why geographically we are restricted to the southern Ko'olapoko area.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Readiness and environmental protection integration. Thank you.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
I have a question, just in general for the invasive species for CRB. There's lookalike, the Oriental beetles, and then for the fire ants, like I think from your presentation, there's also others lookalike. I have a question for, like, for example, there are going to be some mistaken takeaway of those lookalikes. Are there any researches and studies of the long-term impact of those lookalike, you know, species getting taken away? Would that be creating some imbalance of the ecosystem? Just a general curiosity.
So if little fire ant replaced some of the existing ants, is that the question?
If other ants that look like little fire ants got, getting taken away or mistaken as little fire ants.
Yeah, so if we had a mistaken identifier for little fire ants and went in to treat for some other kind of ant, it might not have any impacts. So what we ask people to do when they mail us our ants or their ants, we look to find little fire ant, and we will look at all the ants in the sample because maybe it's two different species. We're also looking for new species of ants as well. We only have 65-ish in Hawaii, and there's 10,000 in the world. Red imported fire ant is one that we don't have and we don't want, and it has been intercepted at the ports. I have yet to find an ant species or a time when there's been a mistaken identity. And one of the safeguards for that is if I get a positive from the public, when we go out to do our survey to figure out how big that blob has grown to, we're looking at every single vial that comes in. And if we got all the vials back and there were no little fire ants, then we'd have questions. This has happened in an area in Monowili where we got a positive, and by the time we got permission to survey from the neighboring properties, we went back and we didn't find any, not one. And what we think had happened was the plant that they had got only had workers and no queens. So there was no population that persisted. We continue to monitor it just to make sure. But it is possible to get an ant and go out and survey and not find any more, but that's the only case that I've ever run into.
This is very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions. One around the coqui frog. I live in Palolo and I have heard it. And now that I think about it, it's not, I don't live that far into the valley. And I know that sometimes these hotlines, these, call lines get overwhelmed. Is it helpful if I'm in Waimanalo, if I'm in Palolo and I hear it, do I call? Do I make a report or use the website? Or is it better like, okay, if I'm in Kamuki, maybe that's when I'm calling because that's a little bit too far from where they've already identified a colony.
The best thing to do is, especially if you have your phone, just get out your video and record it. Especially with coqui frogs, it's helpful to hear the sound. Sometimes people will hear things like kolea or a bulbul, and they'll think it. But if you're familiar with coqui frogs, you're like, yeah, I know it is. Record it, go to the website, and then it will ask you the location.
Okay.
So even if it's in an area that we know about, for instance, Palolo, we've started to get reports from down lower in the valley, and they think what's been happening is the frogs will get washed down and then they end up somewhere else. We want to know where they're ending up as well because we don't want that population to spread.
Okay.
So any coqui frogs, report them.
Okay.
Yeah.
When in doubt, make a report.
Always. Always.
Awesome. And then my second question, and you kind of answered this, but like, you said one of the reasons that there's a limitation to, or one of the limitations to actually containing and eradicating is getting enough people who are trained to treat. That seems to be a sort of bottleneck for this. And one way is training more people, like you said. Another is trying to get more funding so you could create more positions and hire more people. And I'm thinking like, is there anything besides getting trained up and learning about this? Is there anything we can do? I mean, I know the legislative session is over, but I'm thinking like, what's the best way we can help? As a lot of us work with gardens, sure, but we're also in, you know, we're in offices and at the state, at the city, in different counties. Like, wondering if there's other ways we can support.
Yeah, so the city and county has not put any funding towards this effort. All the funding has been coming right from the state legislators. So the city and county they drafted a resolution in 2023, maybe it was 2024, that they were going to, they recognized this is an important issue and they wanted to be able to put more efforts towards it, funding efforts specifically. That hasn't come to fruition yet. Oahu's kind of hard because we have a lot of issues, homelessness, education, cost of living. There's a lot of things that sort of take priority over this. But bringing this up to your local city and county and even your neighborhood board, a lot of the news that has come out of Little Fire Ant was because of the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board. Every single board meeting, they would ask their legislative representatives, what are you doing about Little Fire Ant? What are you doing about coqui? And it came back that they needed to start having some response to that. And so even though the city and county hasn't put money forward, there have been council members who have been trying to work other angles like memorandums of understanding, trying to find us funding for other things. So legislators have a way of being really creative. So I think hearing that this is an important issue for your group, your department, your division, your community, that helps. That really helps elevate the issue. And then once there's public support for this, the funding usually comes. We're just wanting to make sure that that funding doesn't come too late. We don't want little fire ant to be another coconut rhinoceros beetle for Oahu.
Yeah. And that made me think of another possible like strategic sort of way of preventing the spread. Could we encourage like with CRB, you wanted for mulch, for example, we stopped the distribution of mulch because that was a way that would distribute and also harbor larva. But I was thinking like with LFA, if instead of instead of like, are there certain places where you wouldn't want to buy plants from because it's more likely to be an issue? Or maybe we could encourage gardeners to trade within themselves at their own community garden rather than and grow from seed themselves. Is that like a better, would that be helpful?
Um, it could be helpful, but realistically, people are going to do what they're going to do and they're going to do stuff that's easy. So I think the easiest and really the best way that people can help is to regularly test. If you have a community garden, if you wanted to write that into some sort of rules and recommendations that people are testing X amount of times, or when you bring new material in, you're pledging. Like it's hard to enforce a rule, but if you have it that people are buying in and people care and maybe they're pledging to do this. Like I pledge I will test any materials I bring into the community garden. I pledge that I will participate in our annual surveys. I pledge XYZ. I think that's actually the better way to go. And it also gives people like an agency and investment. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm doing what I can. And it comes without, I feel like when you do that, it comes without blame. So when it talks about like where to buy plants, don't buy it from that nursery, buy it from that one.
Mm.
It's just a high risk. It's a really high risk pathway. And most nurseries, when they get it, they're like, we don't want it, come help us. It's very few that are like, don't come into my nursery. I don't want you here. That does happen. But just because it's not there, we can't deem anything safe unless like we go in and test it all the time. And even then, these ants can move, so you test every 3 months. Maybe they got there a month before you tested or after you tested. So it's more about having these different layers of prevention. So if a nursery tests, if they're checking at the ports, wait, so let's go back. If Big Island nurseries are treating, and then they check their stuff before it gets exported, and then they check it at the dock, and then they check it on import, and then wherever it's getting shipped, they check it, and then they do treatments. And then when you buy the plant, you check, and before you give the plant away, you check. And then when you receive the plant, you check. So if everybody's checking, it's really going to help. And that's, to be honest, the ant's so small and so cryptic. It's the only real way that we can get a lot of prevention going. And then, sorry, I should add this in. There is a program where they're trying to train dogs to sniff for LFA, and they're showing some promising results. Maui's already got a dog. So I'm hoping that this tool will be recognized and implemented. It would be extremely helpful for inspections, import-export inspections, and also for nurseries. They can't smell ants 20 feet up in a tree, but smelling containers and smelling things as they're in transit is a quick and efficient and effective way to survey for the ants.
What's the breed of that dog?
So I know. So it's actually it's this organization called Conservation Dogs of Hawaii, and it's not necessarily a breed. It's all about the dogs. Some breeds are better than others. I mean, I don't think you can get an English bulldog to do this, but it's generally a very, type of a family of dogs that do this. I don't know which breeds, several breeds, but it's basically the dog's personality, how they respond to it. And this organization, these are not like professional dog handlers. These are people with their dogs who go through intensive training with their dogs. If their dogs are good at this, they train them on how to do it. And I think they have maybe like 5 or 6 dog handlers now. And they're training on all kinds of things. They're training on the beetle larva. They're training for plants. There's a plant called devilweed that the dogs can smell. So it's really interesting and exciting, and a tool that hopefully we can use. There's always new tools. There's always new research. So that's kind of when I say there's so many detections on Oahu, there's research coming out and new tools. So I don't consider it a game lost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will definitely be emphasizing testing, and we are actually working with our gardeners now to overhaul of their individual garden bylaws, and we could definitely encourage a sort of quarterly or a committee to focus on invasives or a pledge to test. I think that's a great idea. So thank you for that.
Of course. And if you guys do decide to do these garden-wide tests, you're going to have a lot of sticks. You're going to have a lot of bags. Our office is behind Castle Hospital in Kailua. Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3 is our ideal drop-off time. So that way you don't have to pay for postage. You can come and drop them off. We do get big bags of samples from like Urban Forestry at their nurseries. They're doing a lot of testing and they'll bring us, like 80 samples and we go through it and we do the BID.
Well, we will test here in Kapolei.
Yay.
I just ordered one while you were talking.
Perfect.
Well, if there are no other questions, then we can just give applause and a big thank you to Erin for taking your time to speak with us. I know it's a smaller group today, but it will be spread. Just, in a in a good invasive way. This information will get out
Good.
through our channels. So really appreciate it. And you're welcome to stay on the last 20 minutes, but we'll maybe shift into more of member updates if there are any. But yeah, if
Well,
you're
thank you and enjoy the rest of your meeting and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Erin.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Bye. Aloha. Awesome. So for the last 20 minutes, I always say I want to give everyone an opportunity to share what they're working on, if they have updates that are within the realm of gardens or public health or green space and resiliency in general. There's no rules about what you want to share, but if you feel that it could be helpful for the group to know, then please provide any updates that you have. I can start I think it was 2 convenings ago, I presented on the geospatial analysis that we did with Hunter Hevelin, who's a company called Supersistence. And now it's available for public. It's on our website. That's a link directly to it. If you go to our website, I've added a page you'll see on the left in the menu called Planning for Growth. And in there, it's all these resources for our own research or research in partnership with UH, the work with Hunter, and then even our own checklist on how to increase community gardens through partnerships. But I recommend clicking on the first link, exploring that, and then even jumping to the dashboard, and I can put the dashboard link in. It's the last link I sent. This is a way to kind of choose which park filters and community factors you'd want to see. Okay, this is for Oahu, right? But if you are interested in looking at parklands, this is specific to DPR, our department's lands. If you want to see which parks are in areas that have a high concentration of multi-unit housing, maybe you can make it even higher percentage. And then the actual park names will be listed at the bottom of the dashboard, which is pretty cool. And then you could email me and be like, hey, what about this park? This is my neighborhood. I think it's great because I know I'd be interested in participating and it looks like there's underutilized space in this corner, or this corner of the park needs a little bit of love. Maybe this could be a community garden. And that's the reason we have this available so that I'm not the only one looking around. Like people can look around, send me ideas in alignment with what our goals are, which is not only these park factors, but also equity factors.
You want to share screen and kind of show us?
Sure.
Yeah, give us a little tour. This is cool.
Absolutely. So the first link I sent is the story map, which walks you through the approach and why these attributes were selected, right? So, okay, we're choosing parks because that's where we have jurisdiction. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. And we have tons of parks, so there's like 428 locations, but those aren't all possible, right? So we removed certain parks. Like beach parks are really not great for community gardens. Botanical gardens are technically in our jurisdiction, but we're not interested in putting a community garden in a botanical garden right now. Um, Pedestrian malls, they're in our jurisdiction, but they're usually paved, right? They're not. So for now, that's what we remove. But if you go to the dashboard, you could actually choose if maybe you want pedestrian malls to be included, then you would get a different outcome on there. But so that's one filter. And then we also are looking, we don't want really, really tiny parks because we know that community garden is more successful when it has a certain amount of plots and a certain amount of people involved, especially because our model is really reliant on a group of volunteers to run. So that doesn't really eliminate very many parks. It eliminated like 15 parks, 19 parks. And of course, we're also thinking about expanding to areas that don't already have community gardens in their parks. So this just eliminates the parks that already have community gardens. That doesn't mean that, like, we also include the driving analysis, so that helps us see, like, well, there's a park near, let's see, how do I zoom? There we go. There's a park near Makiki, or actually here, I'll give you a better example. Here is Wahiawa Community Garden. We were even asked about one of the parks up here for a community garden, and we're just like, well, it's so close to Wahiawa. Wahiawa Community Garden doesn't have really long wait lists, and it's within the driving distance, right? So we know that probably we wouldn't get as much demand. I mean, it might be an option, but we wouldn't prioritize it. And so we've filtered out areas that have community gardens. Restroom availability. We want our park to have a bathroom. Of course, it's not a requirement. We could always build one with the funding, but we know that our gardeners want access to the bathrooms and not just porta potties. We also want it to be accessible without a car because a lot of our gardeners are busing around. And then the second section of the story map is the community factors. It's looking at um, certain attributes or certain equity indicators, especially because we know that gardeners who have yards maybe shouldn't be prioritized because they could garden in their own yard. Of course, we're also thinking about renters. Um, where's the renter one? Did I skip it? There it is. Renters, and it's not loading, but it helps us understand, well, maybe you have a yard, but you're not allowed to garden in it because you're a renter. We also have included Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population because we happen to know from our survey that they're highly underrepresented for being in Hawaii and on Oahu. We should have a better representation, and we don't. So we wanted to include that. And then population density, so that we could think. I think that's important, right? Because we need to know that that garden is going to serve the most people for prioritizing it, and would have an interested group of people to. And this tends to overlap with high, concentration of multi-unit housing and also renter rates and stuff. And then we did include social vulnerability. And I'm sorry that these maps aren't loading. It's a little annoying, but I'll ask Hunter about that. But the CDC's social vulnerability index covers a lot of things. It covers socioeconomic status, household characteristics, minority status, and housing type and transportation. And so it was a resource that we just wanted to include. We want to be able to provide gardens to social, more vulnerable areas of the island because it does contribute to resiliency. And then that takes you to the dashboard. So let's say we leave out pedestrian malls for now. Let's say we're interested in even more multi-unit housing. Okay, I think I have to refresh it for it to work. By the way, the show instructions button is down here. So if you want to know, you click it on and off. Let's say we really want like mostly multi-unit housing. Then we have 5 parks that come out. And on Ala Park, there's a lot of work already right now at putting a community garden there. We looked at Ka'uluwela because it came up so many times for all these filters and factors, and unfortunately, it's highly utilized. So I will add that like just because a park comes up on the list, it doesn't mean it's necessarily the perfect spot for a community garden. We have to then take this information and talk to our park staff who happen to know whether or not that's a highly utilized park. We wouldn't want to take space away from people who are doing sports activities, for example, um, because we happen to know that there's underutilized space. So let's start there. Let's not take anything away. Um, but then even if park staff say, yeah, that's great, it's underutilized, let's give some love and attention. Once we go, my team, we go and look at it, we're like, oh, this is actually too sloped, or it's not big enough. Like it still doesn't necessarily mean it's a perfect spot, but it definitely gets us in the right direction. And then let's see, you can change population, you can change if it has a comfort station. And then these parks, just so you know, like there are some parks that were not included because they were their own census tract, which means it has zero population because no one lives in the park. Well, maybe people do, but it's not registered, right? So it accidentally excludes that. So it's good to also note this list on the right. Most of these wouldn't be good for a community garden. Makiki already has one. Shooting Complex, not great. Cocoa Head Regional Park, maybe, but it's close to Hawaii Kai Community Garden. So it's not really a big issue, but just so you are aware. Any questions? Please mess around with it. Feel free to share it. This is for the world to know and use.
Anna, I'm so impressed.
Thanks,
Very
Shannon.
cool. I'm very envious of your map. Like we are making our own map as well, but ours will not be a story map. So I'm just wondering how often are you able to update your map?
Well, we'd have to find more funding to hire Hunter to do more work at this point. That's possible some in the future if we feel like the need. I mean, I did already come across some issues with it. Like, for one, our park data isn't up to date, so it's using outdate park data. So once we update our park data, then we would like to update this map. Um, and then I also found we've put in a proposal for congressionally delegated spending to who knows if we'll get it given the political climate, but it did force me to like look at what qualifies for this particular bucket of funding, and they're really interested in LMI populations, which census tracts, which block groups, whatever the measurement, whichever the unit has a high concentration, over 50% of low to moderate income households. And it would be really cool if that was in this map, because then I wouldn't have to go and try to do the research separately. And then I could go for funding and I could like send them a screenshot of the map and then it'd be like, yeah, great, it qualifies. Um, so, things like that we would want to update, but we'd have to get funding to do it again. Any other big updates? I know, Shannon, you're working on your map and eventually we'll have you present to the Hui in a couple months, maybe. How's the work going?
Um, Going good. Oh, we decided we're not going to use policy map. I think we're using Esri instead, and so it's actually um going to be more of like a locator map, and just because it's for relationship building and hopefully internal policy making. So, um, yeah, not going to have too much demographic information on it. Plus, we want it to be user friendly. Um, so yeah, that actually might be really sooner than we thought because we are going to use Esri. Is your map using Esri? Who's your platform?
ArcGIS, which I guess
Ah,
is that an Esri product?
I think that
think
is an
so.
Esri product.
Yeah, so Esri.
Cool. Congrats, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really, really excited with it. It's already helped us so much. Um, that's an update for a future meeting. But I did want to share that maybe I'll be really excited to see what you guys create because I think that idea of like just what'd you call it? It's
A locator map?
a locator map, right? So you can find where these farms or gardens exist that are good for early childhood educators.
Hmm.
Um, and then you click on the dot, right? And then you get some attributes, like get some
Yeah.
information about their hours
Yep.
or contact, right? That would be great for us to do for community gardens across the state. And then even for our own program at the city, I want to do something like what Minneapolis has done, which is like you can click on, you can figure out where there's plots available. Uh, right? Like if people are willing to drive and they don't want to have to like guess. Right now we have no way of like easily telling people where there's plots available without just sending an email. Or and it
Is
doesn't even
there
have to be our program. It could be like the Agape Community Garden and where is that one? Mililani? I read your lips, Kate. Mililani. That'd be great.
is your ArcGIS map and the dashboard public viewing, or is it just internally and with partners?
This is public now. You can feel
Okay.
free to share that story map and the dashboard. I mean, we really want people to access the dashboard through the story map because the story map tells you how that data came to be and how it can be used. And it's like a recommendation from a third party. So it doesn't promise that a community garden can be there. So we kind of want people to go through that channel.
Shannon, I just wanted to ask, what is your map locating?
Yeah, so our map is going to show statewide all of the early childhood providers. That's one layer. Second layer is we've reached out to many farmers statewide. Um, I'd like to reach out to all of them, but there seems to be no comprehensive list of all of them. So we've reached out to many farmers and asked if they do any field trips or access to with preschoolers, any work with preschoolers. And if they do, they're going to be featured on our map along with local farmers markets. We've collected and made a list of up-to-date local farmers market data that also didn't exist really prior. We've reached out to many partners and organizations, and we couldn't find anything current. A lot of it was outdated, so we updated a list and have reached out to the managers of a lot of these farmers markets to just make sure we have the right accurate data. And so that's going to be one layer. And another layer is also food hubs. So it's really a food access map and a locator map for early childhood providers to use this to where they can buy produce from farmers, supporting smaller farmers, and also having like just a connection we want a regular basis um, relationship between an ECE provider, preschoolers, and farmers. Just because we've it's amazing in programs that are already doing it, and so just to help facilitate that and um, relationship building and policy making, just to uh, help that. That's why this map is being made.
My
Shannon,
gosh,
I
thank
have a
you.
question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so we're working on this grant with Hi-Fi and Davis Price from Aloha Aina Poi Company on trying to get the charter schools partnered with vendors and produce distributors on kupuna crops. So right now there's no list out there on any county that shows which distributors sell ulu, kalo, uala, our kupuna crops. And we're trying to build that. But if you have already something, maybe we can talk to you and see if we could add these fields to that. And I don't know, I might have funding. I don't know. I got to ask the people, but might not be
we
a
would
lot.
we would love to have that information also included
There's
on that.
no directory like
I
for school
know.
people and be like, hey, I need 1,000 pounds of kalo. Who can I reach out to?
You know
And
what? Yeah,
all these producers, all these distributors, they don't. I called like, oh, we don't have that data. It's
I
like,
can give
yeah.
you the guy on Big Island who can
yeah,
for
no,
a
like
thousand pounds of
there's
call.
would love. I mean, we're trying to build something in Salesforce right now on just cold calling producers and see who you. But I don't want to recreate the wheel. If you guys are doing it, we can.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, please connect. I can share my email in the chat. Um,
Oh, right on. Yeah.
we're also thinking about building expanding map off of this early education map to help DOE and their 2030 procurement. So that sounds very in alignment to that too, what you're doing.
Yeah, and the nutrition office needs you know, in order for them to approve a menu or something at a school and for them to get reimbursed from the National School Lunch Program, they all, these vendors have to go through, have SFA training and all this jazz. And
Yep.
like five of the schools I'm working with, they don't have NSLP, so they cannot qualify for reimbursements, but we still are coolly honored to help them
Yeah.
because so I want to be able to share with them a tool, to say, hey, I know you guys kind of get funding for this, but come check this out that Shannon them created, and then use this, and then maybe go apply for private subsidies to help offset your budget, because they cannot qualify for national school lunch reimbursements, because they're not an SFA. But anyway, oh my god, it's awesome. Right on. Cool.
Yeah. We'll meet and talk more.
Yeah.
Exciting.
I also would love to jump into those conversations because County of Hawaii, we just finished several months of serving service providers, and now we're creating like a food access resource map. So we should really connect.
Yeah.
I would love to connect with both of you and we're working with the food basket, so kind of it would be awesome to get their lead coordinator and you guys in touch
The
because
fuck?
we're yeah. Yes.
Would
Share your
community garden
email.
space be included in that? Like where people could
Yes,
grow?
we did ask service providers if about all kinds of food access, so community gardens or nutrition, education, cooking classes, all kinds. So yeah, that would be included.
I'd love to be in that. Maybe we should have a mapping discussion soon.
I
Again,
would
another one.
love that. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Anna, can you drop your email too in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Would one of you guys be willing to like just um well, here's what I could do. Do you think it's helpful if we're connecting on a mapping call or if we just communicate via email?
Mapping call is fine.
Should maybe amongst us who are here and interested want to, bye Alice, thank you. Um, if you, we could connect here and figure out a time that would work for us, and then I could share it with the general email list in case anyone else wants to. Yeah? Does that
That
sound
sounds
good?
great.
Okay. Because I've kind of left our mapping project sort of stagnant. It's become a back burner item. So
Yours is so impressive, though. That was ex really inspiring to see.
thank you. Yeah, though that one is great. There's another mapping project too, which is just mapping community gardens across Hawaii. So, but that work, the first one happened because we hired somebody who got it done, right? Uh, it's different when it's like kind of like a side project.
You're the
Um,
impetus. You made them happen. Right on.
any other updates before we say goodbye?
I would like Kate's presentation on the the square foot gardens that she does, maybe on one of our calls. Like that's really cool to, yeah, we have like a lot of
Yeah,
community who are renters and whatnot. And when we do invite more people to these calls, I think that would be something fun for them to hear.
sure. Anytime.
Cool.
I love it. I love doing it.
I had one more question. I'm not sure for Rufino and Shannon, like how statewide or if you have contacts on Hawaii Island. But we're now that we're done or not done, but we've worked with the service providers now. We're serving community that utilize food access services. So we have a survey, and I'd love to share it if you folks have contacts on Hawaii Island. Um, yeah, it looks like okay, awesome. Thank you. I will drop that in the chat. And basically how this is working is we're planning like about so this is just a survey that anyone can take online, and then there's an option to opt into a focus group, and we're planning to hold around 10 different focus groups around Hawaii Island, and participants in those focus groups will receive a $100 grocery gift card essentially. So that's kind of how this works. But anyone can take the survey. But yeah, focus for Hawaii Island. If you guys wouldn't mind sharing with your networks.
Did I already share this with the Hui Māla email list? Do you know?
I don't think so, because we kind of just started pushing this out.
Okay. I can
But
share it
you
with
might have.
this in a follow-up from today and just emphasize this is for Hawaii Island, people who live,
Thank you so
right?
much. Yes, thank you.
We will share too.
Appreciate it.
You don't have anything on social media, would you? Already
Like
that we can share?
like a social media kind of square.
Yeah.
You know, this flyer? That's a good question. I think it is formatted like for printing, but I could get this reformatted for social media and send
Yeah.
that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Appreciate you all so much.
Alex, do you have any updates? I know that you any of I know you guys have an email newsletter, so we get a lot of updates through that. But
Yeah. I don't know if I have any food garden specific updates right now.
did you recently share a job opening at OER? Was that you?
No, there's no job openings at OER. Oh, no, I think I shared the food bank is hiring for an emergency feeding
Oh yeah.
specialist or something like that. Rachel, who's been in that position for a little while, is leaving. So if you know anyone that is interested in emergency or disaster feeding efforts, that's a good role, I think.
I guess I also wanted to ask, or just keep an open invite for ideas for presentations in the monthly convening or activities or, um, discussion points for the Hui. Um, this is, I often just kind of grab whatever comes up. I hear about something interesting and relevant. I'll be like, okay, let's do that. But that doesn't mean others can't just, help us decide what we focus on from one month to the next. Planting the seed. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, this has been great. I'll send a follow-up email. And then I guess I'll just email you guys, Rufino and Anna and Shannon, about the mapping project. And we'll go from there. Alrighty.
Sounds good. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Aloha.
Thanks so much. Aloha.